Hey there, SHM Explainer here. Watch out. The story begins with a girl named Becky who is seen driving her car to work. Becky works at a restaurant in Chadwick City. After a while she reaches the restaurant, parks her car in the parking lot, and heads inside. As she enters, Kevin approaches her. Kevin also works at this restaurant. Together, they walk inside where the restaurant manager Sandra is waiting for them along with the other workers. Once everyone has gathered, Sandra tells all the workers that someone had left the main door open last night, which led to $1,000 being stolen from her office. She warns everyone to never leave the doors unlocked again and reminds them to double-check the locks before leaving. After saying this, Sandra asks everyone to get back to work and herself becomes busy with her own tasks. Slowly, the restaurant starts getting customer. After a while, Maddie, who also works there, goes to Becky and says, Sandra thinks that you left the door open last night, but Becky tells her the door was actually left open by Kevin, and I didn't want to tell Sandra about it because it would cost Kevin his job here. Maddie realizes that Becky is telling the truth. After this, she gets back to her work. A few hours later, around noon, the restaurant phone rings. As soon as Sandra picks up the call, a police officer named Daniel speaks from the other side and says, a man has come to me and told me that the money stolen from your place was taken by a girl who works at your restaurant. Her name is Becky, and he says he saw her stealing the money with his own eyes. After saying this, Daniel tells Sandra, I have a large team of police officers ready to investigate this matter at your restaurant. They can come and interrogate Becky about the theft, but this might tarnish the reputation of your restaurant. That's why I believe you can help me. Hearing this, Sandra, feeling a bit anxious, asks Daniel, how can I help you? To this, Daniel replies, first bring Becky to the backside of the restaurant and let me talk to her. Sandra immediately does as instructed. She goes to Becky, takes her to the backside of the restaurant, explains everything to her, and then calls Daniel so that Becky can speak with him on the phone. Becky tells Daniel, I haven't done anything like this, but Daniel replies, a man came to me and said he saw you stealing from Sandra's purse. After this, Daniel tells Becky, let me talk to Sandra. Daniel then tells Sandra, you'll need to search Becky's purse. Sandra immediately picks up Becky's purse and warns her, if I find my money in your purse, I'll fire you on the spot. Sandra searches Becky's purse right there, but doesn't find anything. She informs Daniel, I didn't find anything in her purse. But Daniel tells her keep Becky detained in the restaurant. Along with this, Daniel also tells Sandra that she will have to assist him over the phone. Sandra says Becky has never done anything wrong before, but Daniel does not believe her and says, if she turns out to be innocent, I will take full responsibility for this, and whatever punishment the law gives me, I will accept it. Sandra connects Becky to Daniel again, and Becky tries to explain to him, sir, I have never done anything wrong in my life, and I am not a thief. Hearing this, Daniel gives Becky two options. The first is that she will have to go to jail for the crime of theft, and the second is that she will have to remove all her clothes and allow Sandra to search her. Hearing these two options, Becky is shaken to the core, but she doesn't want to go to jail, so she agrees to remove her clothes and let Sandra search her. However, she requests Daniel that when Sandra searches her, Maddie should also be present. Daniel agrees to Becky's request. At this point, Sandra starts feeling suspicious and asks Daniel if he's speaking from a phone booth or if he's somehow watching them. Daniel doesn't respond to Sandra's question, and Sandra, feeling uneasy, decides to ignore it and goes to get Maddie, tells her everything about the situation, and brings her to the backside of the restaurant. After this, Becky, to allow herself to be searched, starts removing her clothes one by one. Sandra carefully checks all of Becky's clothes, but doesn't find anything. Sandra informs Daniel about this, and Daniel tells her you'll also need to check Becky's undergarments. Now, under compulsion, Becky removes her undergarments as well, and is left completely exposed. Standing nearby, Maddie feels a lot of sympathy for Becky. After seeing her like this, she picks up an apron and hands it to Becky to cover herself. Daniel then tells Sandra, there's a car parked outside your restaurant. You need to place all of Becky's clothes in that car. I'll examine them thoroughly later. Sandra takes Becky's clothes, places them in the car Daniel mentioned, and returns. She sends Maddie back to work and informs Daniel, I've done everything as you instructed. She then adds, I need to get back to work too, or our business will suffer. To this, Daniel says, fine, you can go back to your work, but you need to call someone to keep an eye on Becky. Agreeing to this, Sandra goes to Kevin, explains everything to him, and brings him to the backside of the restaurant. She tells him that he needs to keep an eye on Becky for some time. Kevin, who is a close friend of Becky, becomes furious when he sees her sitting without clothes. He angrily confronts Daniel and says Becky is not a thief. She would never do something like this. In response, Daniel tells Kevin, you need to inspect Becky. Hearing this, Kevin becomes even angrier and says you already made her remove all her clothes. And now you're asking for another inspection. Kevin then asks, what kind of inspection are you talking about? Daniel replies, you'll need to check Becky's private parts. This enrages Kevin even more. He shouts at Daniel, curses him, and says to hell with you and your inspection. Saying this, Kevin starts to leave but suddenly bumps into Sandra, who is just coming in. He apologizes to Sandra and says, I can't help you with this matter. Sandra talks to Daniel, where Daniel tells her that Kevin is not the right person to keep an eye on Becky. Daniel asks Sandra if she knows someone who can properly watch over Becky. In response, Sandra mentions her fiancé. Daniel says you'll need to call your fiancé and ask him to help with this task. Sandra finds this request quite odd, but without much thought, she calls her fiancé, whose name is Val, to the restaurant. However, Val was heavily intoxicated. Sandra explains the entire situation to Val and leaves him to keep an eye on Becky. Meanwhile, Daniel speaks to V on the phone and instructs him to ask Becky to remove her apron. But Val wasn't so intoxicated that he couldn't understand what was being asked. He refuses to follow Daniel's instructions. Daniel then tells V, let me talk to Becky. When Becky gets on the phone, Daniel tells her if you want to avoid going to jail, you'll have to do exactly as Vaughn says. Ultimately, Becky is forced into compliance right in front of Val. She removes her apron once again, left completely exposed. Daniel, in a very demeaning way, asks V about Becky's body parts, specifically their size. V, however, doesn't respond to this question. Daniel then explains to Val that the man who claimed to have seen Becky stealing mentioned noticing some marks on her chest. Daniel says, that's why you need to confirm whether those marks are present. From Vaughn's voice, Daniel realizes that he is intoxicated. Exploiting this, Daniel tells Val you'll need to ask Becky to jump so that if the stolen money is hidden, it will fall out from her private parts. Despite her discomfort, Becky, under Vaughn's influence and Daniel's instructions, begins to jump. When no money falls out, Daniel tells V you'll have to personally check Becky's private parts. V had become quite attracted to Becky, so he began to check her private parts. Becky by now is doing whatever Daniel instructed without asking any question. While Val was checking Becky, Sandra was approaching them, but before she could see V doing this, he stopped. Sandra became suspicious of V and asked him, what were you doing? V didn't tell her anything, so she contacted Daniel and asked him about it. Daniel spoke to Sandra in a sweet and convincing tone, ensuring she wouldn't suspect anything. Sandra believed everything was fine and left. Daniel told V you need to slap Becky on her backside. Val did exactly as instructed and started slapping Becky, causing her significant pain. Daniel then told Becky you need to do one more thing, and after that you'll be free, and I won't take any further action against you. Daniel said you'll have to become intimate with Val and fully satisfy him. Hearing this, Becky hesitated at first, but since she wanted to get out of this situation, she agreed to this disgusting act. After some time, Sandra brings food for the two of them, where she sees Becky and Val sitting silently. This indicated that Val had already been intimate with Becky by now. It was night, and Val felt ashamed of what he had done. His intoxication had mostly worn off, and he couldn't even make eye contact with Becky. Seeing this, Sandra couldn't understand what had happened. Daniel told her V seems quite tired, so you should send him home. Following this, V left. He got into his car, called a friend, and invited him over to his house. V then told his friend about the grave mistake he had made while being intoxicated. He now deeply regretted his actions. Meanwhile, back at the restaurant, one of Sandra's friends came to visit her. Seeing him, Sandra was very happy. On the other hand, at the back side of the restaurant, it was revealed that the entire restaurant was under surveillance cameras. This meant that everything Val did with Becky had been recorded by the cameras. Sandra convinced her friend Harold to keep an eye on Becky for a while. She left Harold at the backside of the restaurant to monitor Becky and returned to her work later. When Daniel talked to Harold, he revealed everything that Val had done to Becky. Daniel then told Harold, you also need to become intimate with Becky. Hearing this, Harold was shocked and immediately went to Sandra to inform her about everything. He told Sandra what Daniel made Val do with Becky and how he was now pressuring him to do the same with her. Hearing this, Sandra finally realizes that Daniel is not a police officer. She immediately calls the police and informs them about everything that happened, asking them to come to the restaurant. The police arrive and begin questioning everyone. When they ask Becky why she didn't stop Daniel from doing what he did, Becky replies, I was very scared and I just wanted to be free from all of this. After this, the police start their investigation. They make calls to various cities and find out that similar incidents have happened in other places. Before using Daniel's phone number, they trace his location. When they reach his location, they discover that Daniel is actually a telemarketer. The police arrest him and ensure he faces punishment for his crimes. Later, we see Becky filing a case against Sandra in court for the mistreatment she suffered. Following legal proceedings, Sandra is fired from her job and fined as well. A few days later, Sandra gives an interview where She tries hard to prove her innocence. She explains, "I didn't know that Daniel was pretending to be a fake police officer. I was just trying to solve the problem over the phone to protect the reputation of my restaurant." And with this, the movie comes to an end.